In the last decade, the evidence has been slowly growing that ultra-processed food is harmful for us in ways we hadn't thought.
Ultra-processed foods. Now there's more confusion about ultra-processed foods than trying to assemble IKEA furniture with vague instructions.
I guess that's it. Then you find out you messed up on step 8 of 49, you're like, I guess we just don't have a bottom shelf.
Can they cause cancer? Are they killing you? Should you avoid ultra-processed foods at all costs? Keep watching until the end to find out and my thoughts on it as a registered nutritionist. Now let's dive right in. So what exactly are ultra-processed foods? Well, the term ultra-processed refers to the level of processing these foods undergo, not necessarily their healthiness. There are 4 groups of processing according to the NOVA system. These are unprocessed or minimally processed, processed culinary ingredients, processed foods, and ultra-processed foods. What exactly is the NOVA system? Well, it's like putting foods into different teams based on how much they've been changed. In group 1, we have unprocessed or minimally processed. These are foods that are pretty much in their natural state or have only been changed a tiny bit. Think of fresh fruits, vegetables, eggs, and basic things like that. In group 2, we have processed culinary ingredients. These are ingredients that are used in cooking, like oils, butter, and spices. They're a bit more processed, but they're still kind of like kitchen helpers. In group 3, we have processed foods. Now, these are foods that have been through a bit more processing, like canning or bottling. Examples include tinned fruit, cheese, and bread. And in the final group, group 4, we have ultra-processed foods. Here's where the big changes happen. Ultra-processed foods have gone through a lot of industrial procedures and have ingredients that we don't usually use at home. Think of things like packaged meals, sodas, and snacks with a long list of ingredients you might not recognize. So how do you spot ultra-processed foods? Now, before I explain, it's important to note that food processing plays a vital role in ensuring our food is safe, lasts longer, and gets distributed effectively, helping to reduce food waste. It doesn't mean all processed food is ultra-processed foods, like packaged snacks. Identifying ultra-processed foods in grocery stores can be done by checking the list of ingredients on the packaging. Ultra-processed foods typically have a long ingredient list that include food substances not commonly used in culinary preparations, such as flavors, colors, sweeteners, emulsifiers, and other additives. A practical way to identify an ultra-processed product is to check if its list of ingredients contains at least one item characteristic of the NOVA ultra-processed food group, such as high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated or interesterified oils, and hydrolyzed proteins, or classes of additives designed to make the final product palatable or more appealing, such as flavors, flavor enhancers, colors, and emulsifiers. What are emulsifiers? Well, Tim Spector, who is a professor of genetic epidemiology at King's College London, explains this well.
Emulsifiers are essentially a glue. They stick components together so that they have a good mouthfeel and they don't fall apart in your mouth or on the plate. I'm just going to demonstrate what happens when you just add water to it, and it very rapidly becomes like a glue.
Ultra-processed foods make up a significant portion of our diet.
This country get 80% of their calories from ultra-processed food. Poor diet has overtaken tobacco as the leading cause of early death on the planet.
Ultra-processed food accounts for more than 50% of our energy intake, and it's an even bigger problem in children.
Now, the big question, are these foods harmful to our health? Recent media coverage has sparked concerns.
But what we don't know is how all of these different chemicals might interact together in terms of our health.
But what does the research say? Observational studies suggest a link between a diet in high ultra-processed foods and conditions like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and kidney disease. However, it's crucial to note that these studies can't definitively prove causation and face challenges in accurately identifying ultra-processed foods in dietary assessments. Some data suggests that the highest consumers of ultra-processed foods tend to be younger, reside in deprived areas, and have lower physical activity levels. So why might ultra-processed foods be harmful? While the evidence is still evolving, one plausible explanation is their often high levels of fat, saturated fat, salt, and sugar. Regular consumption of HFSS foods is linked to weight gain, obesity, cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, and dental problems. They are often low in fiber, vitamins, and minerals that help prevent heart disease. Research has shown that high consumptions of ultra-processed foods, which often fall into the HFSS category, is associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease incidence and mortality. Other theories include their palatability, altered physical structure, and potential disruption of gut microbial health. Recent research suggests that high consumption of ultra-processed food is associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. And these foods may affect cardiometabolic health through various mechanisms, including their impact on absorption kinetics, which is how nutrients are taken up by the body, satiety, glycemic response, and gut microbiota composition and function. Scientists are trying to figure out how ultra-processed foods might be bad for our health. They think it could be because ultra-processed foods go through a lot of processing, which changes how the food looks and feels. Also, there might be harmful stuff from the packaging or created during the processing. Some people are worried about the things added to UPFs, like flavours and colours, but we're not totally sure if these additives are really bad for us. Overall, we're still studying and learning about how these different factors might affect our health. Now, the million-dollar question: can ultra-processed foods be part of a healthy diet?
That is a million-dollar question.
The answer is, well, nuanced. Some ultra-processed foods like whole grain cereals and fortified products can indeed be part of a healthy diet. The issue is that the nutritional content of ultra-processed foods varies widely, with many being high in concerning nutrients such as saturated fat, sugar or salt, and low in essential nutrients like fiber. While some ultra-processed foods such as wholemeal bread, lower sugar yogurts and whole grain cereals align with dietary guidelines and contribute essential nutrients, a blanket recommendation to avoid all ultra-processed foods could have unintended consequences. Let me explain. For instance, certain ultra-processed foods like baked beans are significant sources of nutrients, and avoiding them might hinder achieving dietary recommendations. Therefore, a nuanced approach distinguishing between different ultra-processed foods and considering their nutritional contribution is essential in dietary guidance. For example, the National Diet and Nutrition Survey in the UK years 2016-17 to 2018-19 showed that wholemeal bread, granary and wheat germ bread contributed to 8% fibre intake and 6% of iron intake in 19 to 64-year-olds. But a lot of ultra-processed foods are sold to us as healthy, quote unquote, when that's not really necessarily the case. Chris Van Tulleken,
By Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, is that right?
That's right.
who's a British doctor, researcher and television presenter, talks about some of these examples.
So I've used an Eat Natural bar, but almost all of these snack bars.
So how can you make healthier food choices? Well, here are some practical tips for making healthier food choices in the midst of all of this information. Firstly, reduce processed food intake by cooking at home and cook more meals from scratch. Secondly, check the labels. Compare packaged food labels for lower saturated fat, salt and sugar. Thirdly, look at your diet as a whole. Balance occasional processed treats with a diet rich in whole foods. And lastly, swap highly processed snacks for healthier options like fruits and nuts. As well as its effect on the human body, ultra-processed food also affects the planet. The way these foods are made and the ingredients used to make them can harm the environment. For example, the production of ingredients like palm oil, soya, wheat and maize can lead to the destruction of natural habitats, which puts many animals and plants at risk. Additionally, the production of ultra-processed foods creates a lot of greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change. Researchers found that ultra-processed foods accounted for 17 to 39% of total diet-related energy use, 36 to 45% of total diet-related biodiversity lost, up to a third of total diet-related greenhouse gas emissions, land use and food waste, and up to a quarter of total diet-related water use by adults in a number of high-income countries. Ultra-processed food production also contributes to land degradation, the use of pesticides and packaging and eutrophication, an excess of nutrient runoff from agricultural land into water bodies, killing lake and river life. Doesn't sound great, does it? So it's important to consider these impacts when thinking about our food choices and their effects on the planet. Remember, it's all about balance and making informed choices. Don't forget to hit that like button if you found this video helpful and subscribe to more videos just like this. Catch you on the next one.